Hey everyone, so welcome to my first ever audio log, and this is going to be a bit different because unlike my Enlightening Tangent podcast where I invite guests, I'm just going to be talking on my own, but I'm also not going to be talking about manifestation related content per se. This is more of a ramble, for a lack of a better word, and I'm just going to be sharing my thoughts on certain things, just talking about all things, everything life related, I guess. And I just wanted to, like put a different type of content out there, not just for the sake of it, but to really just talk about more about my life and just about my personal experiences and things like that. Because when it comes to a certain video, I can only talk about experiences of mine that are germane to that specific title or topic that I'm doing. Whereas if I am doing this type of audio log, I can talk about all things and everything to do with life, sort of like what I already do with my Enlightening Tangent podcast. But then again, for that, I specifically bring in certain guests who are, subject matter experts in their own respective fields sometimes. And so, it's really bit of a gray area right now. Again, I might just put it in that podcast, honestly, because it's not really that different. But we'll see how this goes. But, anyways, the reason why I'm doing this audio log today is it's a bit of a special one because I'm turning 24 this year, and currently it's 12 p.m. In Singapore, and so I'm already 12 hours into my 24 years of age, and honestly, this feels surreal. Like because from 20 all the way till like 23, I've always characterized it with my friends as like feeling like a overgrown teen. Maybe not so in like my 23rd, but like especially till like maybe 22 or 23 and a half, maybe. I'm not sure, but like somewhere towards my end of 23, I didn't feel this kind of worn off. But like I've always had this feeling in my 20s thus far that it's like I felt like an overgrown teenager. And the reason is like you're young enough to not know enough things, but you're also not you're old enough to also have gotten certain things done by then, right? Like you getting your driver's license, for example, you finishing most of your education journey, for example. And the analogy that I always give is like from childhood to like maybe your teenagers, it's like your path is kind of like pretty much set straight, like it's like a train track, right? Everything is like a fixed kind of path. And then as you kind of transition into your teenage years, it's more like a road, right? You still have a bit of a wiggle room. It's not as rigid as your train tracks were back in childhood. So your path is much more flexible, but at the same time you still have those boundaries, right? And you can tell where your boundaries are, but you have enough breathing room to kind of make yourself comfortable and kind of explore your interests and so on, right? And as you get into adulthood, it's pretty much a dirt path, like a off beaten path, right? And like the way I see it right now, it's like the Wild West. There are not enough signboards, if there are any. Things are really up to interpretation, and you're pretty much in the wilderness, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but that's what I feel like it is, right? Like you are on your own. It's really all hands off kind of approach. Not people aren't really telling you what to do, and where to be at and things like that, right? Like things are not dictated anymore, and chances are you don't have, unless you have kids of your own by this age or something, at this point, like you don't have an obligation to anyone per se, right? Like it's pretty much you and your life. And I mean, obviously there are certain factors, like if you're still studying, or if you have like a student loan, or if you are just getting out of something, like you do have like obligations here and there. But like broadly speaking, you are kind of on your own. And I know that that point might happen earlier for some folks, and that point might come later for some folks. But I felt that for me, particularly right now, is where that point is. It's like, I've gone through the hoops, for a lack of a better word, and I'm done with most of my obligations that I should be done with by now. And I'm free, right? Like, I can take my own decisions, and as a result also face the consequences, if any. And I've just much more say in what goes on in my life. And I feel much more free, right? And I think, if you are from the West, that might sound weird, but then again, I have to always remind my viewers, like, despite what I do on YouTube or Instagram and things like that, I still come from a brown family. So, there are certain things that, as a kid was expected of me, right? So if you kind of look at it from that lens, I think what I just, all the things that I said, like, made much more sense in terms of like freedom, and the world being more of a wild west, right? Or if I were to give another analogy, it's like, if a rocket is like leaving the atmosphere, the boosters are finally off. Right now it's just the capsule itself. There's no aid or whatnot. It's just the capsule, just navigating the vastness of space. That's what it feels like right now. And it's exciting, to be honest. I have no clue, absolutely no clue, as to what I'm going to experience this year. Obviously you have your intentions, and you have your goals and things like that, but as they say, the bridge of incidents is something that we don't know, right? Like, we don't know how or when, and things like that. So in that sense, I'm truly walking in blind, but having the faith that it's all working out in the same time, right? Having the faith that one way or another, it's all going to pan out. And in the meantime, all you really have to do is just trust the process, keep an open mind, and most importantly, just have fun. And that's one thing that I, realized, like, as I was looking back at life, I think last night, and just the last few couple of days, is that, like, just be more, loose. Don't take life too seriously. That's one thing I've been telling myself, because as a teen, or even in my, like my early, like super early 20s, like say 21, and 20, I would say, like, I used to be kind of rigid, and I've kind of loosened up over the years, for sure, and it's been a journey. But that's one thing, like, if you let life kind of pass by you, make no mistake, it will pass by you. And nobody, you know can kind of like get away with it, right? Like, time just flows, and you can obviously like say that, okay, time is very slow. I experience time in a much slower pace and things like that, and that does work. But like, I'm just talking about the broader strokes, where it's like one day you're a kid, and then the next day you're a teenager, and then before you're already an adult. And like, I think as kids, like, we one thing that I've always kind of spoken about with like others as well, and they kind of agreed with me, is that time seems to be flowing at a much slower rate as a kid, but as an adult, it's just like, like, things just move at the snap of your fingers or in a blink of an eye. And that's what I've experienced, for the most part, until like very recently. Like, I at one point had to just tell myself, like, just slow down, right? The sense of urgency sometimes that we experience in our mind might not be actually be a real one. And I had to realize that and recognize that, and I just had to tell myself to just breathe and slow down, because this moment is never going to come back. And not to say that in a very like hippy dippy kind of way, but seriously, no, like, time flies by you if you don't enjoy it. And I told myself, like, okay, you can't really like affect or control like whatever that happened in the past, right? Like, because yes, while you can revise and everything, there's only so much you can do with regards to that. But what you do have right now, you have a whole future ahead of you. Go and make the most out of it, soak every moment, and just enjoy life that way. And one thing that I realize a way that we can all do that is by not taking things for granted, is by having gratitude for everything in life. And also, saying yes to more things, slowing down in general, not just going from objective to objective, but also making the journey as enjoyable as possible as well. And this is where, like, the whole living in the end aspect like came into place for me. And to really kind of feel the relief and satisfaction and to go through life as though my desires are already done. And honestly, it's been one of the most peaceful feelings. Does that mean I don't feel fear or panic from time to time when I think about my future? Like all people do, I do feel those from time to time. Sometimes it hits you. But then again, I had to remind myself, like, nothing in life is guaranteed 100%. If you, let's say, have a certain education, especially in today's world, like, with all the things that are going on around us, like, you would see like tech giants just like firing like thousands of people and thousands of people. And, it's one of those things where you're like, where did that come from? And you think like how many of those people thought that they had a secure job, and how many ended up not being able to have one despite their education, for example. And my point is that it's not like, okay, don't go to school or something, but like my point is that nothing is guaranteed. Nothing is ever truly guaranteed. Like if you have a piece of paper and you think that you are doing well in life, that's a false sense of comfort that you have right there, is what I'm trying to say. And that goes with everything in life, right? Like just because you have XYZ doesn't mean that you're going to be good. There are other factors in play, but the good news is that obviously you can control those factors as well. But I'm just saying, like, our society has kind of built up a very narrow perspective of what success looks like. And one thing that I have felt ever since I was a kid, that's only reinforced as I grew up, was the fact that society, the way it defines happiness, may not necessarily be the only way. And the most important thing is that for us to be happy and have a peace of mind, and to look back at life, like I always tell people, like when you look back at, like, the only moment that kind of matters is the one that when you're reflecting back at your life. And how many of those things like would you look back at with a big smile, and how many of the things would you look back with a huge regret? I don't want to be on my deathbed like regretting the things that I did not do. And again, I don't mean to sound hippy dippy, but when you really look at it from like that perspective, with that lens, you would start enjoying a lot more things, and saying yes to more things. And certainly there are certainly time and place to you have to put up boundaries and to say no to certain things as well. But like my point is, enjoy the journey as much as you enjoy the end destination, because there's always going to be something else to aim for. There's always going to be something to do. There's always going to be something to worry about as a result. But if you let those things like consume your mind, life will just flow by you. And that was a big realization for me. And just being more grateful to everything, like I said earlier, and all these things like just contributed massively to my inner peace. And living in the end is just like icing on the cake. And with that, like I was able to really maintain that peace of mind. And I think, like, with that peace of mind, even though I describe adulthood as sort of a wilderness where there's no signs or no kind of guided path, it's just kind of you just roaming around. And you can make your way to the mountaintop that you kind of see far off in the distance, or you can go to the the lake that you, or river that you can kind of hear at a distance too. Like whichever way you pick, you're gonna be fine, right? Like, but that's what adulthood is. Like, it's not gonna tell you to either go to the mountain or go to the river or lake and things like that. You can go to pretty much whatever you want. And that's one thing I realized was things aren't as clearly defined as I thought it was. It's not like you are destined to be XYZ, for example, right? You can pick and make this your own experience, right? It's like a buffet system where, like, you can go and pick the ingredients. You can pick your appetizers, and you can do whatever you want and create a meal for yourself. And that's what life is. There's no specific way or a correct way of doing this, because everyone's path is so unique. No one person in this planet has ever lived the exact same life, not even twins, right? So if you come at it from that perspective, like, you will truly recognize how unique your path is. And that's a big one for me, is that, like, growing up, especially in my teenagers, I used to compare myself with, like, against everyone. My sibling, like the folks in my school, and things like that, right? But one thing that I've always, like, recently made a peace with was, like, you are unique, right? Like, this was a couple years ago, and I really kind of made a peace with that, and that just elevated me as well. So one thing that I'm really grateful for is that, like, of all the mindset shifts that I had in the past few years leading up to my 24 years right now, and I'm really grateful for all these things, because it's like, it's one of those things where, like, these mindset shifts affects, like, how you perceive life, and therefore the decisions that you take in life to bring you to the next level, right? And I don't mean next level in terms of, like, bigger and better, but just the next stage in life, right? And I think with these types of things, like, again, as much as the adulthood seems like a wilderness, it's something that I'm excited to explore, basically. Another thing that I realized, just kind of looking back at my life today, is that, like, never lose your inner child, or just the fact that it will never be truly be lost, even if your inner child is always with you, right? That was the realization that I kind of got, like, just reflecting, because sometimes I would go back and play some of my old video games, or watch some of my old cartoons, and one thing that I've realized and recognized was, these things are still loved by me. Like, I still like watching some of my favorite cartoons. I still love playing some of those games. And I used to think as a kid, like, when I grew up, like, I used to think, like, okay, I will never like these games as I grow up, because I saw all the adults, and how bitter they were sometimes, or like how kind of grumpy they were, or just seemingly grumpy, right? And you're like, okay, well, why don't they want to play? Is adult life really that boring? Is it like, do we have to always be, like, so serious and things like that, right? But one thing that I recognized is that, like, your mentality, how you kind of, like, shape that is up to you. And if you want to go and enjoy something that is deemed as being childish or something, like, that doesn't matter, as long as you get the happiness from it, and as long as you truly enjoy it, and you're not just doing it for the likes or the fame or anything like that, you're in the clear, right? And that's one thing that I've realized as well, is, like, always do things for yourself, not for others. Because like, if you're not true to yourself, you're never going to leave like, something to be remembered by, or you're just never going to live a good life, right? Like, because if you're not true to yourself, you might suppress your desires and go after something that you may not have wanted, and that might not really be the best in terms of, like, unleashing your fullest potential, right? And this is one beauty of life, is that, like, one thing that I've definitely recognized is that, like, if you go after your desires, you would just unleash your greatest potential. And I've often talked about it in my Enlightening Tangent podcast as well. But, like, if you watch some of my videos with, like, Hillary or Catherine, we speak about this in detail, where the power of intuition, for example, the higher self that guides us from time to time, like, to kind of, like, nudge us here and there, like, that force, if it plants something in you, and I do believe that desires are planted by a force, like, if it plants it in you, it means that by following that, like, the way I see it, at least, is like, if I follow that, I'd be in a good place. And that desire is what I refer to as divine direction. And honestly, so, and this is the reason why I say that, is because, like, some people might think, well, what if the universe wants me to do something that I don't want to? Well, there's no way, because the fact that you are drawn to it says that that is what the universe wants you to do, basically. And I will talk about my ideas on co-creation down the line, but I do feel that for the pivotal decisions, at least, like you are sometimes guided by this higher self at the same time. As much as you are the creator of your reality, and as much as you are responsible, because your thoughts do create, your subconscious mind does absorb everything, there are certain things that are nudged for you as well. Like it's just like a shimmering diamond in a forest, right? Like if you go there, you might find something interesting. But does that mean that your life will not be good if you don't follow that? No, not necessarily. Why? Because again, like I said, you are still the creators of your reality. And this was something that I had to realize, was like, you can, like, if you stay true to yourself, and if you kind of listen to that inner compass within you, you might like unlock something that you may not have foreseen. And it's really interesting, like, because with YouTube, for example, that was a huge leap of faith for me. Even though I've always kind of been nudged towards this one way or another, I didn't really like take this seriously, like, and again, growing up in like brown culture is one of those things where you are being presented with a certain career path, and if your potential new career is going to deviate from that, it's a bit of a no right? But anyways, like, that was the case for me for a while, and then here I am right now, like, doing what I love. And I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing right now, guys, if I was not true to myself. And that's one thing that I will always tell people, is that be true to yourself, right? So there are like a plethora of realizations. Like last night I was just thinking about all these things, and there was just so many things that are going on in my mind. And like I said again, it definitely feels like the Wild West, but in a good way. And a lot of it have to do with like navigating this. I feel you need a lot of faith, and trust, both in the unseen and in yourself. So earlier I mentioned like how I went back and played some of my video games, and like in the process I was like just telling myself, like, listen, at one point you were thinking to yourself like, you can't navigate some of these levels because either they seem too complicated, or because like it seemed a bit scary, right? Because in some levels, sometimes you don't have like any allies with you. It's just like you. So we are talking games like Halo, or like this is a late 90s game, so I don't know how many of you might know it, but it's like a game called Delta Force. It's like a first person shooter as well. So with these types of things, I'm like, will I ever understand this? Will I ever be able to like learn all these things down the line or something like that, right? Like, even though it's a video game, I just used to like ask myself, like, will I ever be able to just play this on my own sometimes? Because sometimes when scary monsters come, I would just give the controller to my mom and like let her finish the certain parts for me, where then all the good guys would be, and then I feel a bit of a morale boost, and I feel more confident in fighting, right? Because I like having like a couple of guys around me. And that's another thing, the idea that I may not be able to navigate life on my own, and that I need people. That was a big one for me growing up. And as I grew up, like, one realization I had was like, okay, I overcame that as well, because right now I believe in my abilities to succeed. As much as like, I admit that maybe I might not know everything in the world, like nobody does, but still, like, I'm aware of like, okay, where my current skills are and things like that. And as much as I know where my limitations are, like skills wise and knowledge wise, I know that the higher self will fill that gap for me anyway. So part of the reason why I'm kind of confident is because of the fact that I know how the process works. So even if you are not aware of the technical knowledge, somebody who knows that technical aspects will come into your life and get things sorted out for you. And it has happened that way for me in the past as well. So that's the way I see that. So I'm not too afraid of like navigating life on my own, because that's the thing, like, you're never truly alone. Your higher self is always there for you to create the reality that you want. And that was a big realization for me, moving on from like 23 to 24. Like, that's one big one for me, that like I was not afraid to like navigate life on my own, because I'm always like telling myself and reminding myself that the higher self is always looking out for me. I'm always divinely guided. It's pretty much like having a genie in your life. That's the way I see this whole thing. And so I'm not really afraid of, again, like, navigating life on my own, because I know that one way or another I'm always being looked after. And you can call it whatever you would like, right? Like your guardian angel, God, or whatever name that you would like to give it. But make no mistake that there's always a higher power that's within you, that's always looking out for you, and it also guides you from time to time as well. So just kind of trusting in that force that's within you helps you to like navigate, life that much better. And I'll be the first one to admit, like, as much as that sounds comforting, like, it's all not always going to be rainbows and sunshines. But the one comfort that I always have is that, again, if you know your end goal, if you clearly, define your end goal, and you're not just in kind of like a autopilot mode, and you don't just like let life like push you around and things like that, you will, the ending will always be one that is favorable for you. You will get whatever that you want, and you will enjoy life as you see it, and you will get the success, as you define it in your own, like life, basically. Because success, again, is like different for every people, the definition of it. So whatever that you define to be as success, like, you will get all those things. And all you really have to do is to just walk with faith. And that was a big realization. Again, I didn't have all these realizations last night or something, but like, as the days were rolling towards my 24th, like, I was just kind of reflecting on all these things. And it was just definitely like an enlightening process for me, you know and and just thinking about my childhood too, like, it's insane. Like, oftentimes, like, we don't know how, we are going to do as adults and things like that. And like, right now I truly feel like an adult. Not that up till now I didn't feel like it, but like, again, like, it's one of those things where I've always felt like an overgrown teenager. Like, sure, you cross through some loops in life and everything, but you're not truly an adult yet. Like, it's almost like that Robert Downey Jr. Scene in Avengers where he's like knighting Tom Holland Spider-Man. He's like, all right, kid, you're an Avenger right now. That's what it kind of feels like. And yeah, and one of the reasons why this chapter is exciting, because, when you are not having any sort of like major obligations anymore, and when you are not like, like committed to maybe a particular job, or your studies or something like that, and when you're like truly on your own, that, I think, like, is, really exciting, because you get to go out there and really forge your own path, which is kind of where I'm at right now currently. And that is both exciting and scary, to be honest. As much as it is exciting, I would be lying if I said, like, part of me wasn't scared of it. But again, like, the internal compass, like, really, and putting my trust in the higher self, like, really helps me navigate that. But one thing that I'm looking forward to is just kind of raking up more experiences in life, in the sense that, like, one thing I've always kind of regretted, like, especially in my late teens, is that not saying, yes to enough things. And that is something that I'm doing more of, is saying, yes to more things, and just kind of keeping an open mind and not being too rigid. Like, I got so good at saying no that I said more no's than I kind of should have, to be honest. So I'm kind of just like backpedaling on that just a little bit, and trying to, like, set the intention to rake up more experiences, whatever they may be. I just keep an open mind and just kind of enjoy life that way. And while I do know what are the types of things I want to experience, like, I don't, pin down anything per se. I go very general with these types of things. I'm just like, I really want to enjoy life, and I would like to experience a lot of new things, and I really want to have fun in the process of doing so. I just want life to be a breeze, and every time when I sleep, I want to sleep with a peace of mind. And that's another one, having a peace of mind. One thing that I did not realize as a teen, or even in my like early 20s, like 21, and or even 20 for that matter, is that, like, having a peace of mind is so important. You can have all the things in the world, but if you don't have a peace of mind, none of it is worth, worth anything. And that's something that I'm always like maintaining, always making it a priority. Like, even if I know somewhere, like hypothetically speaking, right, even if I know tomorrow is going to be somewhat of a, like a miserable day, I'm not going to let that ruin my today, where I'm enjoying myself and embracing all things life has to offer. I'm just going to go with the flow, because it doesn't make sense. Even if something is fixed, why would you spend the remaining time being like sad or worried or any of those, right? Like, it's like we all know we are going to die, but do we let that ruin like our life today? No, in fact, we use that as more of a reason to live life more than anything. So just kind of follow that, and I think you should be fine. And don't let any like unfavorable event, be it like, even if it looks like solid concrete quote unquote facts, don't let that like ruin your peace of mind. You are the creator of your reality, and you can get the outcome that you want. And all you really have to do is simply persist and just ask for whatever that is that you want, and you should be fine. And that's something that I always tell my clients as well, is like, don't look too far ahead. Like, I mean, have a trajectory, have a distance, but don't like really worry too much, and so much so to the point where like today becomes a hell for you, right? So that's something that I always tell my clients. Another kind of realization that I wanted to talk about is that folks always ask, like, okay, what would you have done differently knowing what you know right now, and things like that. I honestly don't care about that at all. Sure, you look back at certain things in life and you think, what, if I had known what I know right now, I would do things differently. And you kind of like crop up all these kind of scenarios. But what matters to me, or what I would rather ask myself, is, okay, with all the things that you know right now, what are you going to do? Right? What are the experiences are you going to pull into your life right now? What are the experiences are you going to want to do? And what are the things that you think you can do? What are your limits? Right? And these are the types of things that I would like to really like kind of put to the test, so to speak. Right? And like that kind of opens up all the possibilities in life for me. Like, I can, after learning about manifestation, for example, I can like travel wherever I want to. So if that's the case, what would I like to do? Like, where would I like to go? What are the things that I would like to experience, right? Or with my career, for example, what kind of experiences would I like to have there? What kind of like people would I like to meet? Who are the types of people would I like to surround myself with, right? Like Arshia from like one of my previous podcasts, she kind of spoke about that, where she manifested like a couple of friends who are highly aligned and things like that. She goes by the name Magnetic Manifesting, on Instagram. And she was talking to me about that in one of our podcast episodes, and that was like something that I'm really open to exploring as well, right? What kind of people would I like to be surrounded by? And these are things that I didn't really think about too often, because I like was already living my life. Again, like the life that I'm having right now was the lifestyle that I wanted for a couple of years. So I was really kind of busy just living that life. As much as I have goals and trajectories and things like that, I never really truly like sat down and asked, like, okay, with all the things that you know right now, what would you do? Until like maybe a week or two ago, I would say. And when I looked at it from like that lens, like life just became more exciting. Like I was just kind of looking forward to my 24 birthday, because like it was just like, okay, the route that you take from now is pretty much limitless. And let that excite you, let that fuel you, let that give you the courage to ask for things without any limitations, or without any limiting beliefs. And that's what I'm doing right now, is asking the universe for things without any limitations, knowing and really trusting that it'll all come to me one way or another. And when I do that, like again, like I'm just embracing life from now. Will it be rainbows and sunshines all year round because of that? Maybe not, right? Like certain bridge of incidents, might be, finicky. There might be things that I might have to do, like temporarily here and there, but that's just life, right? But one thing that I do know is that, overall, all the major beats of life are going to be amazing. And, I think as I was like just sitting down and reflecting, that's one major realization I had, was to just go ahead and ask for things, that I may not have asked for in the past, and just focus on building a life that, I would look back at with nostalgic fondness down the line, right? Not really worrying about what I could have done, but really focusing on all the things that I would like to do. And now that I know that my thoughts create my reality, right? Like just using that to the fullest of my abilities. Now, some of you might be wondering, well, you have known this for a while, so why is it making a huge difference for you like now rather than earlier? And part of the reason, I guess you could say, is that while I have used this, and while I have kind of set this kind of similar goal in the past, couple of years, one thing was that like I was again busy living my life with that current manifestations and things like that, and even some of the things that I've experiencing right now was still like bridges of incidents like back then, right? Like I was still in the bridge of incidents like back then when I was like in my 22nd 23rd birthday and things like that. And it has come, full circle, and it has really like it has really like reaching its completion, so to speak. And so finally then I can start to think about the so-called newer stuff, right? And because of that, like one thing that I've recognized is like, okay, sure, like you manifested these things over a period of time, and that you created this lifestyle like wholly and truly to your heart, right? Like with some manifestations, like sometimes we are like, okay, did I truly manifest that as much as I know this works, type of thing. But with this lifestyle, like I 100% know for a fact that I created this. And with that kind of a knowing, and me just kind of reflecting that whole journey and whatnot, I was just like, okay, you know what, like I'm just going to ask for things that are of my wildest dreams now, right? And I'm free to kind of decide whatever it is that I want to do. Because again, like I'm truly at a place in life right now, and I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but like you may be, and this stage might come earlier for some folks, and this might come later for some folks, but I'm at the point in life where it's like a sweet spot where it's like you technically don't have any obligations, both like say from your family side, or like you don't have like financial constraints, or you have the time and you have the energy, and you're not under any obligation with like anything else per se, right? Like I'm at that very sweet spot in life, I feel. I mean, one of my major last obligations was my national service, and like pretty much my education, the hoops I've passed through, like I've pretty much like done with that as well. So, and I don't have a family as well, right? Like I am not like married, or I don't have kids or anything like that. So that way, I'm kind of like in that sweet spot, and I am just so excited to just go and like, not that, you only have to live your life within this sweet spot, mind you, but like my point is that this is a good time to really go out there and experience things, and to really enjoy life, and to create that momentum that you would like to experience for the next, decade or two, or for the rest of my natural life, right? And so that way it's exciting, right? And that's what I intend to do, is like to create a strong base, or to create a strong sense of like momentum, which is like positive, exciting, fulfilling, and just peaceful. And I want to carry that momentum throughout my life from now. And I have gone through enough things in life. I've like frankly, I have had sleepless nights at one point. I've cried enough at this point. And not to say that there will not be any tears or anything like in the future or something. Again, not every single day is going to be rainbows and sunshines, but like the overall beats in life, I really want it to be a very happy life, honestly, because again, there's a lot of things that happened from like childhood throughout teenage life and things like that. Even when like things were going really well, part of me was always kind of grumpy. Is like, I don't know, I'm not still free yet. Like there's all these things that I still have to accomplish and do and things like that. Like, but finally, right now, I'm at a point where I'm like, you can do whatever you want. What are you going to do, right? Like, I'm at that point right now, and it's so exciting. So if you guys have any suggestions, put it down in the comments below, like what I should try out in life or something like that, anything, right? But that's the kind of place where I'm at right now. And as I said, like I used to be very grumpy in my teenage years and my early like adult years as well. Like one thing that I remember, like one of my mams in the army used to tell me, like, you're not smiling. You are like 20, 21, you're still young. You have a whole life ahead of you. You're just starting out. Go and enjoy life. Like smile, be happy. Like if I were you guys, I'd be so damn happy right now. That's what she would tell me. And I'm like, yeah, right. But looking back, like that's so true, right? And that's one thing that I intend to, like just, and that thing has always kind of stuck with me, and I've loosened up over the years from since then. But that's something that I intend to carry forward, right? And another exciting thing is that like I'm just more like one thing that I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but like as a child we always think maybe the adult version of us is going to be like grumpy and things like that, or just kind of very serious and not enjoy life as much, right? And I think we know that that's not always necessarily the case, and it's much more nuanced than that. But one thing that I've done is to like kind of take a lot of reference from my childhood self. As much as I've grown and evolved and things like that, one thing that I realized was like I still like the same cartoons, I still like to do the same things. And part of this whole journey for me has been, especially the last few years, has been like kind of embracing the inner child in me, and to never let that go, not suppressing it, and to really let that curiosity really like enjoying things the way I see it, and not just like doing things for others, or or to show the world that I am enjoying life, like to genuinely just do things to enjoy life in general. That's a very inner child thing, right? Like that's what a child does. Like adults always like to do things that are what's like trendy and things like that, even though you might not get any satisfaction from it. You might just do it just to kind of show the world like, hey, I'm having a good time. But a child would just do things because it's fun. A child would just go and like play with a puddle of water on the street because that's fun. But an adult might hesitate, like what would people think and things like that, and they might do stuff that may not even be enjoyable for them, but because of the fact that it's trendy. So I kind of go back and kind of embrace like how my childhood self would have done things, and like explore things that fueled me back then, that I kind of suppressed over the years, and not have any limiting beliefs on my capabilities, or the so-called obstacles and things like that. Because again, that's the power of manifestation, right? You ask for it and you get it. You don't have to worry about the how and when. And that kind of attitude comes from our childhood, right? Like I always tell my clients this, like how kids always just go straight to the end. They don't, if they want to become a pilot, they don't think about the exams that they have to take. And that's the kind of like mindset that I've embodied in the last like year or two, and it has really worked for me. So I'm just going to continue that momentum. Again, like it's all about building that momentum and like having fun in life for the rest of my natural life, and having a much more like relaxed pace, because sometimes it can be very hectic, and it's like one thing after another for me. And so like I just wanted to take something like just kind of slow down in life and just go with the flow, just kind of be in a state of ease. That's something that I'm intending for. And yeah, the future looks bright and I'm really excited. And that's about it, guys. So thank you for listening to this. If you guys like this, let me know. I will make more of this down the line when something significant happens. But guys, thank you so much for watching. Stay safe and happy manifesting. Peace.